Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, January the 18th, 2021, the 5th of Shvat, 5781. Coming to you on this rainy morning from Jerusalem, also now on Facebook Live as well. Going to be recording the first part of my show here on Facebook Live. You can catch the rest of it either on my Facebook page on thelandofisrael.com, on that Facebook page, and in many other places. Hope you are well, hope you are safe in your part of the world. You can always get in touch with me, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. And going to get started here just with some of the, a few of the top stories, and then we'll turn off the Facebook and record the second part of the show. Wanted to start off by saying that I want to thank everyone for reaching out this week. I got a bunch of emails this week after last week's show. A lot of heated emails about, we talked about last week the situation in Washington, and I specifically related it to Israel. I'm talking about the takeover of the Capitol there in Washington. A lot of people, well, some people liked what I had to say. A lot of others did not like what I had to say, and that's fine. But I think that one thing I discovered is I don't know if I will ever be a good politician, because I guess I'm pretty thin-skinned. I got to get a little thicker skin if I want to go into politics someday. And I'm going to get to some of those letters. I'm going to read them here on the air a little bit later on. But just as an example, one letter, one woman wrote something like, "You're stupid and unoriginal." And she didn't even reference the subject matter. She didn't reference what item she disagreed with or didn't like that I was referring to on the show. She just said, "You are stupid and unoriginal." And yeah, I was offended by that. I mean, she's not going to be receiving the podcasts any longer. I mean, if you're going to make your point like that, you know, I won't accept it. I won't tolerate it. Maybe I need to be a little bit thicker skinned. But that being said, if you're going to say you don't like the show, or you don't like something I say, or you disagree with my opinion, at least let me know, like, what aspect of what I said you disagree with or didn't like. But no, she just had a blanket statement: "You are stupid and unoriginal." So she is now off the email list, because I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's acceptable, just to go ahead and say something like that. Anyway, in terms of the latest news, and again, I'm going to get to some of the other letters. People actually had a point to make. I'll get to some of those later on. The latest news, an IDF spokesperson, this is the Jewish press reporting, announced early Monday morning that 2 rockets that had been launched from the northern Gaza Strip in the direction of Ashdod fell into the Mediterranean Sea. No incidents or damage was reported. The red alert was not activated because the rockets were launched and they landed in the sea there. Following the launch of the rockets, IAF fighter jets attacked Hamas terrorist targets in the southern Gaza Strip. According to the IDF, the Air Force attacked workshops teaching tunnel digging operations. And this, of course, Hamas, we're talking about the Hamas tunnels here, the Hamas terror organization. This is a workshop teaching people how to dig tunnels, how to dig terror tunnels into Israel. So that is the target of the IDF after 2 rockets fired last night. Many people probably didn't even hear about it. Number one, it doesn't get reported in the mainstream media. Number two, and thankfully in this case, the rockets landed in the water and did not cause any damage and did not wake people up in the middle of the night. The top item that I wanted to discuss in this first half of the show is an article that, a subject matter and an article that came out yesterday. The JTA reported that the UN aid agency for Palestinians, as it says here, says it mistakenly gave out textbooks calling for jihad. The UN aid agency for what it says here are Palestinians said it is taking steps to address the glorification of martyrs and calls for jihad in books it handed out to students. This isn't a mistake of any kind. UNRWA, we're talking about UNRWA here. The UNRWA textbooks They handed out the UNRWA textbooks to schools under the Palestinian Authority, and I'll get to what is actually in the books, and then said they made a mistake because the books were anti-Semitic. The books called for the destruction of Israel, praised martyrdom, praised jihad, praised terrorism. And UNRWA says, whoops, our bad, we made a mistake. Okay? So UNRWA made these statements saying that they were taking steps to address the issue following a report published the other day by the Jerusalem-based Institute for Monitoring Peace and Cultural Tolerance in Schools, saying the books went to hundreds of thousands of students in the PA and Gaza. Many seem to be based on the PA resources. Yeah, no surprise there. Some mislabel Israel as Palestine, that's what the books say, or erase the country from maps of the Middle East. These are the books handed out by a UN agency, okay? Here's an example. One Arabic grammar booklet featured phrases like jihad, quote, jihad is one of the doors to paradise. Another reads that the Palestinians are lions in fighting the enemies. One book has a poem about how a raging fire awaits what they call the occupation. Another states that the motherland is worthy of any kind of sacrifice, and the enemy committed heinous offenses against the mujahideen, Arabic for anyone fighting a jihad or holy war. One other example here, a 9th grade social studies booklet accuses Israel of deliberately polluting Palestinian territories and spreading disease by dumping radioactive and toxic waste. The UN agency handed out a book which says all of this stuff. They handed it out to students under the PA. So what does the spokesperson of UNRWA say? What did she tell the JTA? She said that these texts were not in line with UN values and mistakenly included as the agency rushed to supply students teaching aids during COVID-19 lockdown. They had no other books. Let's forgive them, right? They had no other books to share with kids learning because of the coronavirus. So they grabbed whatever they could find. And what could they find? Books which called for jihad, the destruction of Israel. And they say that this was a mistake. It was an error. It was just a mistake. Okay? They rushed too soon. I mean, the fact, number one, that these books are in print, you got to take that into question. And number two, to believe UNRWA, an organization which perpetuates the conflict and has been perpetuating the conflict for 73 years, trying to, first of all, leaving the Arabs who fled here during the War of Independence, leaving them in squalor, whether it's in Jordan or Lebanon, or even in places like Jerusalem. Do you realize that these UN, UNRWA-controlled neighborhoods are 10 minutes, some of them are 10 minutes from downtown Jerusalem, and of course throughout Judea and Samaria. But you have UNRWA-controlled neighborhoods in Jerusalem where they share these textbooks which preach hatred and jihad of Israel. And they've been doing this for years. And now the spokesperson says that this was a mistake. I really think that her problem is that this is, in their minds, that there isn't enough hatred and anti-Semitism in the books. I think that's what is the real mistake in their minds. I mean, this is like straight out of Borat. If you've seen some of the Borat skits, of course, he pretends that he's Sacha Baron Cohen pretends in this character that he's an anti-Semite. And, and I remember one of the clips, him talking about there not being enough anti-Semitism, whatever it was. I mean, this sounds like a sketch or a skit, but no, this is the reality in UNRWA. They handed out books. The books called for jihad. I don't know of anywhere in Israel where you can mistakenly pick up a book and hand them to a school and that they call for mass murder of Arabs. For some reason, that doesn't happen in Israel or in most countries around the world. If UNRWA truly cared about their education system, if they really wanted to teach their kids right from wrong, don't you think they would open up the book and review the book? How can a mistake, a so-called mistake like this, be even fathomable? It's impossible for this to be a mistake. This, unfortunately, is part of the curriculum, whether it's a PA book or an UNRWA book. This is the reality. This is what we're dealing with here. And again, perpetuating the conflict, telling these people, leaving them in squalor, telling them they're going to go back to the homes that their grandfathers and great-grandfathers abandoned after they started a war against the new Jewish state of Israel in 1948, just ingraining into them these types of thoughts. And that is just completely reprehensible, unacceptable, but not unexpected when it comes to UNRWA. We've talked about UNRWA before, but this was an honest mistake by sharing these textbooks. Anyway, I thought that was, one of the top stories going on. I mean, we're going to get to the whole coronavirus situation in Israel and everything else going on in Israel and in this part of the world. But people really need to understand that this UNRWA organization, while all other refugee crises are being solved by one UNRWA body, every other crisis in the world, this specific organization established just for those who call themselves Palestinians, Arabs who lived in this area and fled during 1948 from their homes. Anyway, I'm going to turn off the Facebook Live now. I'm going to do the second half of the show. Read some of the letters I received, some of the letters that actually had a point to them, whether they agreed or disagreed with me, and didn't just say that I was stupid and, what was the other word? Stupid and unoriginal, right? As one of the listeners did say about me in the past week, but that's okay, I guess. Anyway, my name is Josh Hasten. This is Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, and we are now live on Facebook as well. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. All your comments are appreciated, and happy to read your emails on the air. You can get in touch with me on Twitter as well, at Josh Hasten, on Instagram now. And so we'll turn off the Facebook Live. We'll do the second half of the show. Don't miss the second half. Go to my Facebook page, go to thelandofisrael.com, and you'll be able to hear the second half of the podcast. Hope everyone has a beautiful Monday. I am here in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. A nice, rainy, finally, we got a rainstorm here in Israel. It's going to last, I think, another 2 days. The Kinneret, the Lake of Galilee, is rising. That's positive. Unfortunately, some flooding up in the north. That is not positive. But we need the rain here in Israel. Turning off Facebook Live and coming back with the second half of the show.